Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're happy to be watching this video. I'm Tim Webb, and welcome back to another episode of our mini Fit Finance sessions. The episodes where myself and the other chartered financial planners at Efficient Portfolio get together and just have a chat about what's going on, either in the last week or what's up and coming out and about in the world we live in today. So today we've got some interesting topics, namely, mainly politics driven. So starting in the wider field in the international waters, Tom, do you want to kick off with really what you were going to mention this time?
There's not so much going on, but I think in the US at least, it seems that Joe Biden's probably got a much stronger claim to the presidency in the next term. Trump's recent rally went down pretty badly. That's probably not the best English, but I doubt he's too bothered about those comments either. But I think there's been a big swing towards Biden, and what that might involve is maybe some corporation tax increases in the US. US has done very well off the back of Trump's tax cuts. He cut corporation tax from circa 35% down to, I think it's around 20%, something like that, less than that, which was a big win for corporate earnings in America, which obviously bumps up the share price. And there was also a lot of bringing cash back onshore due to some other tax changes there that they did there. Whilst that probably, if Biden wins, that probably won't see a complete reversal. There'll probably be some increase in corporation tax, and that might dampen some earnings in the States. And I think as well that I think countries are now trying to figure out what they're trying to do supply chain wise. So whether you're on the US supply chain or a Chinese supply chain, lots of investment potentially going into India to sort of combat the Chinese supply chain issues. However, India as a market has its own issues where lots of foreign firms will team up with local firms to try and benefit, as being a standalone foreign firm tends to be harder to do business. So as always, I think there's opportunities and threats, but from a global perspective, they're just a few points that I've picked up over the last week.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be surprising to see off the back of this people try and steer more clear from China, or at least take some power away, with the supply chains being so heavily connected to them, or has been, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of countries are trying to be more self-reliant, and I think it's just looking at these wider trends, and there's some of the thoughts that get discussed within portfolios that we manage, or we're discussing with other people and getting thoughts on those. But yeah, it's how can you these days be we've had 10 years of global trade, or more than that, since the Thatcher Reagan era, lots of expansion in global trade, and it's how can you be more diversified now to counteract sort of a trend back in the other direction of a bit more insular.
Yeah, well, bringing things a little bit closer to home, more domestically, I suppose on the same kind of bandwagon of taxing the rich, I guess. So here in the UK, I think the Shadow Chancellor has said, off the back of this virus, etc., the situation, how we're going to pay for it. And the biggest one, which they're saying should be, or at least part of it, is a wealth tax. But generally the concept of taxing the super well off, as it were, rather than the low to mid earners. They're sort of coming on the angle that it would be fair that they have to, fair in inverted commas, that they have to foot the bill more than the other guys. So, I mean, there's some interesting stats here. I mean, I'm not sure how much weight it has, but from an opinion polling perspective, apparently 58% of the public believe that the richest in Britain should pay more tax in whatever form, but just the concept of they should make up more of the pie than the others, which is interesting. But then I suppose to counter that, let's be the devil's advocate. The majority of the people out there aren't the richest by nature, are they? So obviously the stats are going to be a little bit skew if, I think, on that side. But just interesting things. Obviously the pension tax system has been the crux of budget conversations for God knows how many years now. The introduction of whether or not there's going to be a flat rate of pension tax relief, whether they slice down sort of inheritance tax shelters which the pension wrapper gives, whether it becomes that sort of a different angle would be to get rid of the nil rate ban, for example. So the allowance which is granted on estates on death, in terms of how much of your estate won't be taxed from an inheritance tax perspective on death. So yeah, I mean, there's even I've never heard of this one personally, but the mansion tax, I believe, has been proposed in the past, where quite simply houses above a certain or worth a certain amount or above just get taxed more. So some interesting things, but we'll see.
I think one of the problems with these sort of wealth taxes and things like that is people who are wealthy have the ability to be a bit more mobile and move their assets around. And it's also not explained to people that actually, if you look just purely at income tax, the top 1% of earners pay 35% or more of the tax take. So they do pay more than everyone else, and actually considerably contribute. That doesn't mean I'm saying that they should pay more or less or whatever, but I think it's quite easy to say, well, someone wealthier than me should pay more. But if all those wealthy people move abroad, you look at what happened in France with people getting taxed at 70%. A lot of them just move, and then you haven't got those people buying and selling goods in those countries and investing in businesses. So it's always a double-edged sword. But they've got to do something. But it can't be everyone's in it together, but some are in it more than others. And to almost quote a famous book.
No, quite right. I think it's quite easy in times of these with so much social unrest to point a finger and just say, oh, yeah, as you say, so and so is better off than me, so they should pay more. Whereas, as you say, actually,
I think it's quite tricky to do it the other way, because if you look at the poorest section of society, to then start to try to generate a greater tax revenue from there, it's not going to work. Especially as one assumes it's that sort of section of society that's probably going through the toughest things with having their jobs and job security and all that sort of stuff. So you imagine that echelon of society is that a lot of them have been furloughed, perhaps they're likely to be made redundant and what have you. And so then increasing the tax burden on them, I think one could say it's going to be, one could say most people would think that's pretty unfair when there are wealthier people who've had more job stability on the whole, perhaps, who are probably in a better position to bear the burden.
More unpopular from a political point of view as well.
Certainly, yeah. Well, and the Tory party have got to keep their blue wall going, and certainly by increasing tax on those lower to middle income families is not going to increase their popularity in the blue wall, blue wall of the north of England.
I think as well we're probably past just relying solely on monetary policy. Is if you want those people to prosper, you've got to create jobs and provide them infrastructure and things to do so. A lot of that infrastructure does get spent in London, and equally that's a better bang for buck. But otherwise, it's compounding, isn't it? Over time, the more you spend there, the more money you're going to get from your investment by doing that. But equally, leveling up other places can. I think we've got to go, like I said in the previous podcast, back to spending our way out of it. As much as everyone hates that and it sounds counterproductive, but we've got to invest in new technologies and create new jobs rather than just taxing one or doing the other. Productivity is the biggest issue. If we were more productive and generated more output, then we can survive with less tax.
Yeah, that's right. Get Huawei in to build the 5G network. Or not. So we were saying we want to become more insular earlier. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Good old BT will have a go.
That's right.
Yes. Henry, I believe you had something.
Well, I'm just guesswork really. So I thought there's a few things. So the Chancellor, Mr. Sunak, he's planning on doing a mini budget. The normal budget's in October, isn't it? So he's doing a mini budget on Wednesday. And so now I was reading in the Sunday papers, everyone's having a guess as to what he's going to announce. And a few interesting giveaways that I quite like. So one was £3,000 to a business who takes on an apprentice, which is quite a neat way of and quite a targeted way that youngsters who are struggling at the moment just said. Another one that goes alongside this is VAT cuts, because VAT disproportionately affects those of lower income families. So if you can cut VAT on some goods and services, that might help. But by far my favourite idea that was coming about this weekend was that the government may release vouchers for every adult and child in the country. So £500 for an adult has been mooted, £250 for a child. But you've got to go and spend it in a pub or a restaurant. So this sounds like free beer tokens to me. So I am tremendously excited about this idea. And
that'll only be half your tab, Henry.
Behind it. What's that, Tom?
That'll only be half your tab.
That's right. That'll be July's drinking done. But
what are the children going to spend it on? I mean, 250 quid's a lot of peanuts, really, in the pub, isn't it?
That's right.
Those fruit shoots are expensive.
Yeah.
They didn't have any orange juice in the pub we went to over the weekend. My girls had to drink water. What a shame.
God.
I think that's. I don't know the economic sort of pros and cons, but it's not a bad idea, because I think if you give someone a voucher, they're spending money, but they'll probably spend on other bits and services when they're there. And I think it'll create a culture of people not being scared to go out. And as long as everyone's safe, then I think everyone's probably due a holiday or some sort of trip. So hopefully.
I think they did it in America, didn't they? Recently, everyone got £1,000 or $1,000 from IRS or whoever in America. But I think it needs to be targeted in the sense that if you just get cash, then of course lots of people will just save the cash. Not that you get an awful lot in your savings account right now, but actually if you've got it in tokens and you've got to go out and spend it, then that seems to be the right way. Maybe you get airplane tickets too, because of course the airline industry is not having it all that good either. Fingers crossed. I could do with a holiday.
It'll be all.
I think a lot of you could do with me going on holiday too. But,
Excellent. Okay, perfect. Well, that's it this week. So obviously politics is always a touchy subject. I think it's one of the rules. I can't remember. There's other things not to bring up at a dinner party. Henry, maybe a better place to prop me up here. But
no, I tend to bring them all up. Politics and religion, I think, are the two things
that
bring up at a dinner party.
Yeah. Although I can't really say this is a dinner party, but there you go. Anyway,
next week we're going to talk about Islam and Christianity.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, if you have been listening, thank you very much. And as always, feel free to comment or put us down, prop us up, whatever you want to do. We're happy to engage. Thank you very much. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.